Welcome to another episode of the Self-Storage Insight Podcast. Today I have James Shepard on the show with me. James, I have so much to say about to introduce you. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Of course.
And I'll kind of let you take over from there.
Yeah, so no one on this podcast has any idea who I am, of course.
No.
But I actually was one of the founders and lead investors in CCStorage. And so my background is in payments. So I've been the payments guy for a long time. I have a lot of different businesses, Full Stack Payments, which actually does the payment processing for CCStorage.
Yep.
We have CC Sales Pro, which is a big kind of social media outlet. And so getting into self-storage was actually an interesting story, which I don't think has ever been told on this podcast of how it actually got started.
I don't believe so, no. No, you're the one to tell it too, so let's hear it, yeah.
Well, because Ben came in a few years after. So I actually started CCStorage probably 8 years ago or something like
2018 or so.
Yeah, and so Ben and I were working together in a different business, in a payment processing company. And we had a client reach out. I had a web design company as well. And we had a client reach out and said, hey, can you build us something to manage our self-storage property? We just want to take payments. Like, that's it. Just about payments.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, yeah, that can't be that hard. Stupid. Like, of course it's going to be difficult. Well, anyway, we create this like terrible software back then. It wasn't CCStorage back then. And we're like, yeah, you can take payments. Well, started working with them and realizing the complexity of it. And they're like, well, it'd be great if we could have like a sitemap.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, wait, hold on.
I remember those days.
Yeah, like this is a whole other
sitemap.
Yeah, this is like a whole other thing. So long story short, I put the software on the shelf because this was actually before 2018 even. This was back before. So I put the product on a shelf for a while.
So is it more of like a glorified invoicer for?
Yeah, it was just like an invoice your client. Here's your list of clients. Here's how much they owe me on a recurring payment.
Gotcha.
And it was like set up a subscription for your client, your tenant, and that's it. So anyway, so then it's put on the shelf for a little while. And then what happened was I went into it. This probably would have been 2016 or 2017, where I was like, hey, let's actually give this a shot. So we got some developers. Again, I have different businesses. We have developers in these businesses. So I had a developer come in and say, hey, let's build an actual software. Not anything like what it is today, but like something that's reasonable, And so we built it. We went to market. And the market wasn't ready yet. And the reason the market wasn't ready is because a lot of the smaller self-storage properties, they at that time weren't using software. And so we were trying to go to that down market, like let's just make something really easy and simple. But they weren't ready yet because they were like, well, we don't want to pay anything. They were taking cash and check. They weren't even taking card back then. Well, then what happened was COVID. When COVID happened, we realized, now the self-storage property owners that weren't taking card and all that before, now they have to have a remote way to take the money. And we realized that. And then the other big thing, which we're going to talk about today, is dual pricing. So we're like, okay, the two pain points was they didn't think they needed to take card. With COVID, they had to take card.
Yeah.
And the other one was they didn't want to pay anything. And we were charging. Whereas then with dual pricing, we're like, oh, we can give it away for free. So when those two things happened, then I ended up hiring Ben to come back. He had left when I sold the previous company. He came back and I was like, hey, CCStorage, this is an opportunity. So he came back to run it, and then you were hired, moved over to there very shortly after that, and then the rest is kind of history at this point. And so
I remember test running it before the sitemap when I was working with IceMap, with our other business, and we realized quickly that you kind of need a sitemap amongst many other things to be able to be competitive in this market. And here we are. I mean, I feel
like once we had the sitemap, then it was like, then we was like, oh, we can actually sell people.
Yeah.
And then people started using the software, and then it was like an avalanche of feature requests of this report, that report. And now it's been, that's been several years ago.
Over 2 years ago, yeah.
Yeah. And so now it's like, oh man, it's so cool looking at what we have. I just saw the auction feature. I'd say I'm pretty disconnected, as you know, from all that now, but I was like, oh my word, that's so cool.
Yeah.
And so it's really neat.
You can schedule auctions to hand off to, like Bid 13 or Storage Treasures or somebody, or you handle it yourself. As far as the email notifications, read receipts, all that's included. As we add features, there's other many features that need to be added that benefit everybody. So it's kind of cool to see those, as they're released.
Well, and I was reading a book called The Innovator's Dilemma recently, and I'm actually finishing up now. And it was really cool to hear about. It's like with these different businesses, when you have these innovations, like the idea of, hey, dual pricing, and we don't charge anything for the software with CCStorage. Well, that's a cool idea, right? And you're going to get a lot of lower level interest from hey, I have a real small property, so I'm going to start using it. And then the big ones, the big competitors, they tend to not. It's like that's just happening in the smaller units. But as the feature set is expanded, you get to this point of inflection where you're like, oh, now we actually have the features and everything that a larger property would want.
Yeah.
and it doesn't cost anything.
Yeah.
And now it's a kind of an unbeatable competitive
Game
advantage.
changer.
And that's why I think it's growing as quick as it is. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, that's the story of it. I think it's very, very cool. And,
Yeah, it is.
And it's awesome.
It's really
so
cool.
looking forward to being here and just kind of talking about the payment side of it.
Yeah, this is a cool interview. I mean, outside of this, we're close, but like James said, he has a lot of other irons in the fire. So it's kind of cool to be able to have him for a second to be able to discuss this topic with you guys. And we're going to mainly focus on payments. There's a lot of questions when it comes to the dual pricing model that CCStorage offers, compliance, which are state specific in a lot of cases, federally regulated in many cases. So James is going to kind of fill us in here and let us know some things that we need to know and maybe answer some questions that I've been asked by storage owners that I'm going to present to him and some questions I might have. So
yeah, and I guess one other bit of context on that before we dive into those is kind of like why would people want to listen to me on this topic? And so what's really important to understand is I've been in the payments industry for 17 years, and when the idea of like cash discounting, dual pricing, surcharging, when all of that kind of came out as like somewhat popular about 8 years ago, at first I was initially very hesitant. I was like, no, this is a bad idea. Customers are not going to like this. But within took me about 6-8 months to really get on board and understand how to actually make a better customer experience while on top of that eliminating card processing cost. And then because of my role in the industry, I'm a top consultant for most of the big processors, for the ISOs, for the banks. And so if you go online and search for like, what is dual pricing or that type of thing, you're probably going to find my videos. I've been kind of the biggest proponent nationally for these concepts in general. And then, of course, when we did CCStorage, we were like, well, this is my area of expertise. Of course, we want to implement it in a compliant way. And so I think that's kind of where they intersect.
Yep, and that's what we've done. Yeah, I always call James the Michael Jordan of payments. And if you search what he just mentioned there, you'll see that yourself. So cool. So, to start this off, we're going to talk about payments. So there's a lot of terms out there thrown around: dual pricing, differential pricing, cash discounting, surcharging.
Right.
People kind of lump those together, especially if they don't understand. So how about you break those down and the differences and, what we actually offer through CCStorage?
Right. So big picture, right, we have this idea of I'm going to pay a different price based on my method of payment. So I call that differential pricing. So that encompasses all of them. There's even models like we do a lot of government payments. Totally different service fee model. We got to pay your utility bill. But the core idea is differential pricing, and it's very important for self-storage property owners to understand. This is, first of all, not a new concept at all. This has been happening at fuel stations for 50 years, probably longer than that. Basically, since cards were put out there. You go to a fuel station, you see the card price and the cash price. So this is very common. Utilities, phone bill, every consumer out there, everybody who's renting a self-storage unit is used to this concept.
Yeah.
Somebody that they pay, they have a differential price, cash versus card. So then the question becomes, okay, well, why do we want to do this? Well, the reason we want to do it is obviously, and you look at it from a high level and you're like, I want to reduce my cost. Yes, that's huge, right? But in addition to that, it's very important to understand that every self-storage property today is passing the cost of processing on to their tenants, right? The question is, how are they doing it? Are they giving everybody the same price, whether they pay card or cash, right? And then they're going to take from that revenue, they're going to go and pay their credit card processing bill. Like, no one listening to this podcast is paying their credit card processing bill with their personal account. We're all absorbing the cost of payment processing from our revenue. Yeah, the question is, what's the fair way to do it, right? What's the right way to do it? And so what's happened is over the last 10 years, the cost of accepting a card has gone up every single year for 10 years. So the card brands, the big banks, they keep increasing the cost to accept digital payments, card payments. And so it's like, what do you do about that? Like, well, you have to do price increases. And that's what happens. Like, everybody does these price increases, very common in the self-storage industry especially. But the question is, what's the right way to do it? Should you increase everybody's price because some people are using their card? No, because that's not fair. Those people are getting reward points. They're getting all the, they're getting all this, the benefits of convenience of access to capital. So the idea is we want to have a differential price, right? And so what's happened is, as one industry after another has taken hold of this concept, consumers have become more and more used to it, more and more accepting of it, right? So real quickly, let's break down now. It's like, okay, so the idea is, yes, you want to do differential pricing, right? Consumers are going to like it. It's more fair for them. It saves you money. So now it's like, well, then how do we do it, right? 3 ways. You just mentioned them a second ago. Cash discounting, that's where we say, here is the regular price, and I'm going to offer you a discount from the regular price, which is a cash discount if you pay with cash or check, right? I don't think that's a good fit for the self-storage industry. I never have. For one thing, it's like, yeah, do you really want people driving in and paying you cash? Like, you're not really trying to encourage cash payments. That's not really a good idea, in my personal opinion. I don't think that's a great fit. The second one is surcharging. Now, surcharging, I even noticed some of the CCStorage competitors lately have rolled it out in a way that's not compliant. Sorry, but I'm the industry expert. It's not compliant. But we have to be very careful because compliant surcharging, there are actually very specific rules from Visa and MasterCard, and there are even laws that go by state about surcharging. Surcharging is when we add a fee to the transaction. So we're saying your unit is going to be $100, but I'm going to add a line item, and I'm going to say, well, I'm going to add $3 to that because I'm going to charge you this. Well, a couple of problems with compliant surcharging for the self-storage industry in particular. One of the biggest issues is that you can't do a surcharge on debit. That's a big problem because a lot of, big percentage of the volume is debit. So you're still going to pay those fees on debit. And spoiler alert, the payment processing companies know this. So what do? They charge you more for debit transactions than you're currently paying so that they can make up the margin. So you end up paying, you don't save very much because it's like, well, it's like, well, I'm able to pass the cost on credit cards, but then I have to absorb the cost of debit. So it doesn't work well in that context, in my opinion. There are industries where it works really well. There's also a cap, so you're capped at a certain percentage. So a bunch of rules and regulations around it. So then that leaves us with the third option, which is the one that CCStorage has, which is dual pricing. Dual pricing very simply is you're offering 2 different or even 3 different pricing options to your tenant. In this case, we have the card price, the ACH price, and then some tenants choose to also have a cash or check price, right? Yep. And so depending on which one you choose, you're going to pay a different price. It's very important the way you talk about it because it's like, it's not surcharging. We're not adding a fee. We're saying we are establishing different prices, clearly communicated. And that's where it's hard because in a software situation, you have to make sure it's communicated across all the different places where it's going to live. So and that's great you brought that up. So there's a psychological thing behind it too. So say your unit's $50, right? And the tenant gets to the very end, they're like $50, got my move in. If it's prorated, security deposits, that move-in price gets jacked up, which you want to keep that low. That's a different topic, but at the very end, they're ready to roll, and bam, they get hit with a surcharge or an extra fee. So that's like a penalty to them. It's not received that well. What works so well with CCStorage is right up front at that very first page of the rental screen, there is an established card price and then the cash price or ACH and card. Right. So psychologically, they're not being penalized at the end. We're fully transparent with that price, and 9 times out of 10, if they're at that screen, they're going to move forward. Well, and it's more like 999 times out of 1,000. Yeah. I mean, literally, like we hardly have any resistance to that. Yeah. But again, to your point, Visa and MasterCard and even state attorney general and stuff, the things that they care about is they don't want the customer to be surprised, to your point.
Exactly.
And that's the issue. And so this isn't just about compliance, it's also about experience. Yeah. Like we're not trying to like trick your tenant into paying your processing fees. Like this is about a very transparent, fair experience that's going to leave them feeling like, oh, good, I was given a choice. I could pay with my card, I could pay with ACH, or I could pay with cash. I got to choose, and based on my choice, I knew transparently from beginning to end what I was going to pay. Exactly. Yep. Yeah, and some other things. So we just touched on the customer experience. A lot of people don't realize 86% of rentals nationwide are online. That's nationwide. So the whole web presence, the online rental experience. What matters most to your business and to ours is your tenant experience. So we were able to dial that in and improve the online rental experience, combined with the flexibility with the, which method of payment they choose. But, some other things. So let's talk about the objections that we faced initially. So 8 years ago, that wasn't really on the table. It was an operating cost. It wasn't received very well. It was a new thing. Yeah. So what's your take on the business owners that are still concerned about passing this cost? Their state special. Well, here's what I would say. A couple things. Number one, in my opinion, the biggest kind of objection to this, right, is actually a really admirable one. And I applaud the people who are listening right now that are like, I don't know about that. Yeah. Most likely it's because they don't think it's the right thing to do. And I really respect that. Like, I think that's awesome. Like, they're legitimately like, I don't think this is going to give my tenants the best experience. So they're motivated by customer experience. And so I'm like, number one, applaud you for that. Like, that's good. Absolutely, yeah. Right? The issue is they just haven't seen the data that I've seen. So I'll give you an example of this. I've seen portfolios of payment processing accounts where they were doing, oh my goodness, one I saw was doing about $500 million a month in volume. They implemented dual pricing in a compliant way, right? Not in the self-storage industry, but in another industry. Yeah. And when they did that, you would say, the question is like, well, how much did their processing volume drop? In other words, because they implemented this differential pricing, obviously a lot of customers would be like, well, no, now I want to pay with cash. That's what you would think. No, their volume actually went up.
Yeah.
The reason it went up is because they did a differential price. So it went up like 4% or whatever because of that differential. Like literally the customers did not care at all. They didn't change behavior at all. Now, here's what gets tricky though. If you go and interview if you like send an email to your tenants and you're like, hey, do you want me to add more to your bill? It's like, no, I don't.
Yeah, right.
Like they're not, but here the issue is from a behavioral perspective though, they don't change their behavior and they actually can even appreciate when you do it right because again, people love choice. You know, that's why when you go to Starbucks, right, everybody, you know, it's like a very popular business. It's not because they have one type of coffee. Right, you go there because there's choice. People actually like that, and so when you go in and say, "Hey, we're not gonna, do a price increase for everybody," and this is, by the way, this is how you communicate it to your tenants.
Exactly. Yeah. Initially.
Yeah, you don't go out there and say like, "Hey, we raised our price on some of you so we could pay our credit card processing."
It's not a rate increase either.
No.
So there's no notice required.
Right.
You're doing what the majority of the nation's businesses are trying to do or are already doing. Yeah.
But the way you communicate it is very important, which is, hey, the cost of accepting payments keeps going up.
Yeah.
We were going to do a price increase for everybody.
$8 per unit, 8% per unit.
Right. But we decided that's not fair. So instead, we implemented a specialized program where we're going to have different prices based on the method of payment to make it very fair and very transparent for everybody.
Yeah.
If you communicate it that way to your existing tenants, no one's going to have an issue. They're going to totally understand that. It's like, look, if you don't want to pay this, then pay the lower price. Put an ACH on file or pay with a check, whatever it is, right? And then you got to decide like how far are you going to go with it? Are you going to still allow cash? So there's a lot of other questions, but I think customer experience is crucial. And I think those who have an issue with it, primarily it's the customer experience, which again, I can tell you right now, it's not a problem. I've seen it in literally hundreds of thousands of merchants across the industries. It's not a problem.
We ran a lot of numbers before implementing this,
Oh, yeah.
And the relaunch,
The other reason why they would do it is, and you brought this up, is there's a concern it's not compliant or something like that. Yeah. I mean, I could dive into all the details of why it's compliant. I don't think anybody on this podcast really wants me to do that. But, we could go back to Expressions Hair Design versus the Attorney General of New York. In that case, we could go to consumer protection laws. We can go to Visa rules. I can talk about any of it, but rather than doing that, what I would say is, dual pricing is a fundamental right of free speech for the people that are listening to this. In other words, as long as you communicate your price clearly and transparently to your consumer, you have the fundamental free speech right to communicate your prices in that way. What you don't have the right to do is to trick people into paying more money. Yeah. So that's where, again, I'm not going to name any names, but some in the industry have just oh yeah, we're just going to roll this surcharge out, just add a fee on later on in the process in a way that's not clearly disclosed or whatever. That can get you into trouble. I agree with that. Like, don't go down that path of the line item. It's very tricky. Versus saying, no, we're going to transparently from beginning to end give our tenants a clear experience of here is the price you're going to pay depending on your method of payment. That is compliant in all 50 states. I'm not an attorney. I can't provide legal advice, but I have dealt with many attorneys in the industry. I know all of them who deal with this stuff. In fact, there's one I'm working with right now that just filed a class action lawsuit against Visa.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They're always under fire. Yeah.
Because of one of my clients. So anyway, I'm very familiar with all this stuff. It is totally compliant if you do it the right way. The beauty is with CCStorage, we built it that way from day one because we wanted that to be a pillar of what we were doing.
Absolutely. So. Absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, that about sums everything up as far as payments go pertaining to storage. Is there anything else that you wanted to tell anybody?
Yeah, I do actually. One of the things I was going to talk about today actually was card migration.
Yeah.
Also a payment thing, right?
Yep. Also,
so this
which was a game changer for us. A huge objection initially. So we offer this great product. We're going to save them a bunch of money. Awesome. I don't feel like dealing with that. It was a common objection. You know what I mean? That's a nightmare. So we addressed that pretty quickly, and we are the only software that offers to migrate card and ACH data from our competitor software, third-party processors to ours because we know the industry, we know payments, we know how that works. But I'll let James speak to that because he speaks that language a lot better than me with tokens and encryption. So we'll let him address that.
Well, it's like a really big problem, right? Because ultimately, if you're a self-storage property owner and you're currently using another software, odds are you have a lot of cards in there, and those cards are stored cards.
Yep.
Well, the problem with that is those stored cards are stored in something called a token. So the idea of a token is very simple. It just means it's an encrypted bit of data. So it means that if I go in there and I somehow hack into your software, it doesn't do me any good because all I get is this garbled token. I don't get an actual card number, an expiration date. Like I don't get that information. Well, here's the challenge. You want to switch to a new software company because you're like, well, that software company has better software, better pricing, whatever it is, right? Well, the problem you run into is you want all that card information. You don't want to go back to all your tenants and say, hey, can you go load your card information in again? Because we switched to
a lot of phone calls, yeah.
It's a pain in the neck. So you want to do what's called a card migration. Card migrations are very complicated because you have to get both parties, the current company holding the data and the new company that's going to accept the data, you have to get them to use a similar encryption key. And I'm not getting into all that, but it's very complicated to get it transferred. As a result of the amount of like payments expertise necessary to do that, to mine, and again, you mentioned a second ago, I don't know for sure, but to my knowledge, none of the other self-storage software companies do a card migration, which is crazy to me. But, that is something that CCStorage does because, again, I own Full Stack Payments. I own all these other payments companies. And so we have that expertise. To us, a card migration is like, that's what we do. That's,
it's kind of a common thing.
It's a very common thing in various industries that I work in. And so we've had that core competency from early on. And so, today what that means is if you have a bunch of cards stored and you're like, I just want to bring those cards over, that's something our team can do. Now, it does require cooperation from the other side. We had one I was talking to the team about recently I won't, again, name the name, but another company that literally refused to release the cardholder information. It wasn't one of the big ones, but it was a small one. But they refused to release the cardholder information. It's like that cardholder data belongs to that merchant. It belongs to the self-storage property owner. And so that blew my mind. But you are going to have some issues occasionally, but we're usually 99.9% of the time, we work through that and we're able to bring all that cardholder information over. But then once you bring it over, that's not like, then it's all great. You have to map it to the right customer in the new system. Mm-hmm. So we have a whole process, a whole implementation team that does that at CCStorage, which I'm really proud of. And so, I just wanted to bring that up because I know that's a big pain point on the payment side as well.
It was the biggest pain point. The transition, especially as we scaled. And along with that, we migrate gate codes, security deposits, protection plans. We build site maps, multi-location management. I mean, there's tons of cool things we do. But it is becoming a software battle. Like our software is better than yours is better than ours. There's pros and cons. There's trade-offs for each. But the main selling point to keep in mind with CCStorage is the potential impact to your bottom line. That we give you instantly. So 3 to 4% of your bottom line. Even with a 50, 100 unit facility, that's huge for your family, your business. But when you get to the multi-location, 5,000, 3,000 unit facilities or more, you're talking potentially millions of dollars, at least hundreds of thousands in savings with a transition that's not going to get much more seamless. You know what I mean?
Well, I think too, it comes back to valuation because like most of these, I would imagine most people listening right now are probably not planning to hold on to their self-storage property until they die. They're probably going to hold it for a period of time, sell it as an asset, right? And so it's like you go in there and you bought this self-storage property. Well, what is the value? How do we come up with the value of a self-storage property? Is it about the buildings and the physical assets? No, it's about the income.
Oh yeah.
You're selling an income producing asset. And so when you look at the EBITDA or the profitability of a self-storage property and you go, okay, well, I'm generating $1,000 a month in profit. That's what you're selling. If we can come in, CCStorage, and say, hey, well, you're also paying $200 a month in credit card processing and $100 in software, and we can eliminate those expenses, that's $300, and you go from $1,000 to $1,300 a month in profit, you just increase not only your monthly income, but the valuation of the asset by 30%. So I think when you start running those numbers and look at the actual impact on the valuation of the asset, and then layer on top of that the fact that the people, we have over thousands of clients. These clients are not, it's not like they're implementing this and then people are like, oh, I'm not going to rent from you anymore.
Yeah.
It's like we bring the cards over, everybody's happy. We move
Zero
forward.
reported move-outs nationwide.
There's no problems whatsoever. And it's like, well, why would you not do this? Again, especially with the idea of, I want to be careful here because I'm not saying this is a way that you can screw your customer and they won't even realize it. I'm not saying that at all. They actually like it. This is transparency. This is saying, hey, we all know it costs more money to run cards.
And there's more to it too. They have a tenant portal, which we show them a site map of where their new unit they just rented is located. Right. They can view gate codes instantly. They have access to their receipt library, invoice library. We give them a lot of control, which keeps them happy and which eliminates the need for them to call you with support issues, for tedious things. So there are things that they gain by switching. So they're not just eating a fee or paying more. They have more control. We give them more access. Yeah. So there are some benefits to the switch too.
Yeah.
But
good stuff.
Cool. So that sums up this episode of the Self-Storage Insight Podcast. And to learn more about our sponsor, CCStorage, please visit ccstorage.com. And James, you have a great day.
Thanks, Matt.
This episode of the Self-Storage Insight Podcast is brought to you by CCStorage. CCStorage is a self-storage property management software that you can utilize at your business with no monthly costs. It has all the core functionality and automation that you need to efficiently manage your business, but without passing any costs over to your business. So check out ccstorage.com to learn more.